Hi, welcome along. It's another Westerley VR race, Series 3, race number 4, straight out of Brompton. This is the Brompton factory. If you've got one of those folding bikes, it no doubt came out of that factory, went through this gate and turned left, just like we're going to. Down to the start, and as we turn left here, that will be the start of the race. So the Brompton factory comes back into view. You can see there on the side, it says 1 Brompton, the actual Brompton factory. So we're straight out of Brompton, out of their car park, through this little gate where the security guard who works for the people who own all the properties here, which is Segro, which is a large UK property company that owns industrial estates up and down the country and broad, actually, across Europe and some of the States, as far as I am aware. Segro stands for Slough Estates Group and was originally formed to build the Slough Trading Estate, which was the biggest trading estate in the whole of Europe, and probably still is. And we shall be starting another race in this series on the Slough Trading Estate. More of that later. Watch out for Life on Mars, another race that we're planning for this series. But meanwhile, here we are, straight out of Brompton. We're in Greenford in West London, where Brompton bikes are made. Of course, the name comes from another part of West London, Brompton, up near Earl's Court, and that's where they originate from, this factory here being somewhat newer. So we go through those lights, and this is going to be a little bit of an undulating course. We're just going over a bridge here, so this ramp isn't particularly sort of stiff or challenging or anything else like that. But it will go up and down a little bit on this one along the way as we sort of trundle around Greenford and across ultimately to Ruislip on straight out of Brompton. If you can see on the screen there, I've put in brackets NWL, that stands for North West London. And of course, the title is taken from NWA's album, Straight Out of Compton in Los Angeles. Well, this certainly isn't Los Angeles, is it? It's the suburbs of West London as we go through the usual typical 1930s style housing that sort of forms a ring around central London due to the expansion of the 30s. I think central London's population dropped by millions during the 30s as they rehoused people further out into these new areas out here. And largely people, I think it came with the railways and enabled people to live out here and commute into London. You're going to see quite a few of these in the early stages of this race, or this preview anyway. On the race you'll actually see trees and fields because we'll be using an RGT stock scenery for the magic roads. So the early part of this is we're heading out of London in a kind of loosely northwest trajectory. So I mean gradually we'll sort of kind of hit the very edge and ride along a road that it's essentially is the it's not quite the sort of the boundary of London because London does go further, but it's where they kind of stopped any more building in what they call the Green Belt, a sort of area around London that loops it like a belt, where they don't want any more buildings, just to sort of ensure that some of the green space survives. So as I say, you're going to see plenty of houses like this for the early part. We are sort of climbing here a little bit, as you can see. And as I say, it's an undulating course. I don't think any of the slopes in this are going to cause you any harm, but be aware that some stretches of road are going to be slightly need a little bit more power than others because you will be going uphill. As I say, this is the scenery is not going to change a lot as we go along here. I suppose largely in what I'd call South Harrow area now. I think as we get past Eastcote, you'll start to see the style of the houses changing, where the next sort of kind of layer of London was built and the architecture changes a little bit. It reminds me of trees. I think I said this before in one of the commentaries that if you look at the architecture of London, you can see how it's expanded and like a tree, if you slice the trunk, you see the little rings which show how much it grew in a year. There's little rings of architecture in London as it's expanded over the years. Before it was kind of halted with the Green Belt and they started building, after, I suppose in the 1950s, but certainly after the First World War, started building new towns to house people, places like Harlow and Bracknell and plenty of others, and people were shipped out of London. rather than just let London grow bigger and bigger. So here we go. As I say, yet another road full of these sort of 1930s style houses. We're heading, as I say, towards, South Ruislip Eastcote is this area here, if it means anything to you. It is, as I say, a lot of these areas around London are, very much the same wherever you go. You could be in southeast London and probably ride around roads that look like this. So it's, not special. Might look a bit different if you live somewhere else in the world, of course. Every country has its own character when it comes to architecture. So, as I say, carrying on along here, there's going to be a few of these sort of roads before we burst out and we get out to a different part of London. This is South Harrow. This is the bottom of the main street in South Harrow. Up to the right there is all the shops and everything. We're not going up there. We're going this way, and we're going to head towards South Ruislip. So we'll go along here for a little while, and then we'll eventually hit a roundabout where we swing right. You'll see the roundabout is one of these sort of areas where they've got the out of town shops. There's a Halfords there and a few other sort of carpet and furniture places. As I say, when we hit that and turn right, then we're heading up to Eastcote, and it's only after Eastcote that I think you'll start seeing the changes in architecture. There's not been too much to commentate on the race here. As I say, it's slightly undulating. You notice when we went down to that through that railway bridge at the bottom of South Harrow, we were going downhill. The road up to Eastcote is slightly uphill, but none of these are tough climbs that really warrant an attack. But what they may prove to be is attritional. So you might just find that as each one comes along, a couple of people fall off the back of a group. I don't think you'll solo out of a group or split a group completely on any of these ramps. I think they're not really ramps; they're slopes. I don't think they're going to cause too much damage anywhere. I could be wrong, but my feeling is that if there's a fast pace on the front, what it will do is gradually just allow a few people to sort of come off the back, and the group will thin. Usually, as we all know, people who do fall off the back tend to sort of get onto the next group, and throughout the race you end up with several groups that form their mini races, and that's one of the reasons why certainly when you see some sort of online racing, it's graded according to people's abilities. I'm not really sure that we're going to do that, because I think that people just find their own groups and have their own personal battles further back down the field. You may not agree with that, but that's kind of the conclusion we reached, that we'd let everybody race. You might not win the race, but if you win your little group, you knew you won your sprint, and your name won't be have a gold medal next to it, but your personal achievement is noted by you and the others in your group. So and I think it allows people to find their natural level quite easily as well. But I also hear all the arguments for groups. We're not going to do it, as I say, on Westerley VR, at least not at the moment. That's the current policy that we're going to stick with, open to everybody, and just see where you come in. So that's that. Policy over. You can still see it's quite flat. As I say, later on in this road, we're going to hit that roundabout by the Halfords and the BP garage, turn right, and there's a sort of gradual climb again. But we're heading westwards at the moment. If you think about the way London is that London's built around the River Thames, so it's essentially a valley, and it's quite a shallow valley. So you travel for miles to get to the top or bottom of it. And if you go from east to west, you're following broadly the trajectory of the river, so it's flat. But if you head north to south in London, you're more likely to go up hills. So we're heading west and it's fairly flat, but we'll turn right and we'll get a gentle slope, which is just part of the natural Thames Valley. As I say, Thames Valley is not steep around London or anything. It's just, but it is a natural valley. So, east to west is less likely to be involve any hills than travelling north to south. There's a a very broad brush rule in London. So as I say, heading westwards, but here we are. We're at Halford's roundabout, and we will swing right and start heading northwards, and consequently there will be a bit of a slope. Building site on the left, just evidence of another big pub being locked down for housing, which is happening all over London these days. And I think eventually they'll start putting some preservation orders on pubs because so many are closing down, and such a great British institution. But there we are. We won't go into the politics of that. Pubs are certainly having to adapt. So now we're heading up towards Eastcote. You can see the architecture is slightly different along here. It's not that we're quite out of that 1930s zone. It's just that it wasn't fully developed then, and you can see the little spaces where more modern houses are put in, but we're back into that 1930s architecture here again on this particular road. As I say, this is gently going uphill most of the way. We're not going to quite go to Eastcote. We're going to swing and do another little bit of sort of jiggery pokery west northwest to get ourselves out of Ruislip and almost into the countryside, right on the fine line. As I say, strategically, as I was saying, the further north in this area you get, it is a bit hillier. It's not a hilly area, but you will find more slopes the further north you go as you get towards what is essentially the top of the Thames Valley. I don't know if geologists and geography experts would quite agree with that, but I kind of see when you get to a certain point in this area, you get to a point where it doesn't go any higher, and you sort of go down a bit into the next valleys, like the Colne Valley. And I kind of see that as the top of the Thames Valley. And how technically correct that is, I don't really know. But you can actually see the slope a little bit here as we head up towards Eastcote. As I say, I don't think it's going to be a surface that you'd want to attack on. But bear in mind that if you can keep the pressure up, people will fall off the group. The more people fall off the group, of course, more people have to put effort in. And as I say, attritionally, you can wear down a group with this sort of course without that big decisive climb that's going to sort of swing everything in one direction. As I say, this road goes on for a little while, so there's not a lot to report. Again, you can see the architecture is slightly more modern around here. In fact, there's a little school along here that's got a mini cycling track just on the left, and they hold Saturday morning cycling lessons for sort of really young people. I don't know what the top age is, but it's certainly sort of not for the sort of teenager who looks like they may be a pro one day. It's younger than that, and they have little they get people into cycling and they coach them on a much smaller course. And of course, in this area, if you do get to the teens and you look like you've got any talent, you'll probably be snapped up by the Hillingdon slipstreamers, who I think there's a waiting list to get on. I mean, parents are just desperate to get their kids into the Hillingdon slipstreamers. They hold Saturday mornings at the Hillingdon cycle circuit where they learn to race and are coached fully down there. So I think this is the school here is just probably a feeder school where young cyclists can probably be picked out with, and the good ones will no doubt end up with the slipstreamers. You can just about see this is still climbing a little bit, but it's not like you have to put any extra effort into this, or well, you probably do, but any great extra effort. Now we're going to hang a left here rather than go up to Eastcote Station. Slightly narrower, more residential street, as you can see by the cars parked, so we'll have to dance around and share the road with traffic coming in the opposite direction at times. But as you can see again, the architecture is now very different as you're moving into a more modern area of London. In fact, the contrast between the houses on both sides of the road suggests that the ones on the right are more modern than the ones on the left, as a general rule. Now we're going to hang a right in a moment as we and then we're going to go over a little railway bridge. I do smooth the road so these railway bridges don't quite ramp in the way that they do in real life, and I think they would just spoil the race if they were too sort of steep for a couple of metres, because it would just bring so many people to a halt. So I just smooth them a little bit. You do still do the bridge, but you won't feel it in the way that you would if you were riding it in real life. As I say, I don't smooth them by much, otherwise that would spoil the race, but I just make sure that they're in sort of suddenly silly jerky gradients that's just going to catch everybody else and out and cause mayhem. So this is the railway bridge. This goes over the Metropolitan line, which goes from the City of London out to Uxbridge, right on the edge of West London, which is broadly the district we're in now. We're not far from the edge of northwest London or West London as we speak. I'm going to go straight across here. More houses. So this is a commuter area. It's well served by the railways to get people into London. So this is the sort of thing you're going to see. Again, we're getting further, a little bit further out now. So eventually we're going to head up towards Ruislip Woods, and that's although the woods are in London, they're all preserved and everything else like that, and it feels like you kind of reached the countryside once you get up to Ruislip Woods. Ruislip Woods also houses Ruislip Lido, which you may or may not have heard of. One of the other races in this series was the Lido Rido, which starts and finishes at Ruislip Lido, which is basically a lake in the middle of the Ruislip Woods, which, as I say, have all been preserved, very countrified. They even have a little mini railway that goes around it, so you can venture into the woods. And quite a few people take their mountain bikes over there, although it doesn't have trails. I guess from a mountain biking perspective, we're not overloaded with trails here. We have some great downhills up near Tring or Wendover, Aston Hill, Aston Clinton, and there's some down in Bracknell in Berkshire. But the Ruislip Woods, I mean, you do see people going over there on their mountain bikes, but I think if you're a serious mountain biker, it's probably just sort of fairly passé. I'm not a very good mountain biker, so I find it quite challenging when I'm there. So it is what it is. As I say, once again, pointing to the architecture here, you can see it's that sort of mix of slightly older 1930s houses, and all the gaps have been filled in by more modern houses. Land does get snapped up and filled up at quite an alarming rate in London, because there's not enough of it, and demand for housing has been high. It remains to be seen whether that happens after COVID, with more people working at home and things like that. But as I say, we're heading towards Ruislip Woods now. You can probably, maybe you can't actually. You will in a moment sort of kind of see there we are. If we go down this hill now, you can see the horizon there. That is Ruislip Woods. So we're sort of dipping down a little bit, and then it goes up where the woods and the Lido are. We're not going to quite go up all of that today. We're going to nearly go there, but again, this is undulating, and you can see here that we're sort of going downhill a little bit, and we'll sort of turn left. Again, I'll say that if you go north and south, you get the hills. I mean, we're sort of going northwards now, but whenever we're going to turn westwards, this will be slightly flat with a little bit of a sort of ramp up to a roundabout, and we turn right and go past some playing fields. So it kind of, it's undulating, but you can see the gradients are very, very small, and I just don't think this is going to be that influential on the race. Somebody maybe on the back of a pack just can't quite hold on one slope, and once distanced can't get back on. I mean, as I say, attritionally, I think it works, but I don't think any of these little bumps are going to be decisive at all in the race. As we turn right, going down by King's College playing fields. King's College is one of the London universities, and for some reason that I have read and now can't remember, this land was left to that college, and you'll see in a moment there's lots of playing fields, nobody playing on them because we've got a COVID lockdown at the moment, and then there's Eastcote or Ruislip, there's a hockey club anyway, on the right hand side of the road, and the playing fields on the left. got a nice little cafe there, which I did approach the owner once about to run some cycle events from there, but he wanted too much money, and I went elsewhere at the end of the day. So, as I say, these playing fields are just on the left and the hockey club on the right. The cars parked, there will be people going for a walk. There's a running track in there as well, and I think a lot of the joggers use it, and those joggers seem to think that they should use the road. And we're going to see, we're going to turn left at the roundabout, but the trees in front of us, if we'd gone straight across here, take us into Ruislip Woods. So, sometimes if I've got a mountain bike, I just go straight across that roundabout and into the woods, because that's where they start. Just behind these houses on our right, with the playing fields still on our left. Now, this road, again, is another one of those typical things. It isn't a difficult hill, but it goes upwards. And if somebody's slightly stronger than you, it could make the difference. Or if somebody's weaker than you, you could get rid of them off this. So, as I say, it's full of these sorts of things. And I don't think tactically there's a place where I would say this is where you're going to attack on this race and this is where you're going to shed the field. But I think if you are a strong rider and if you take all of these hills and put a little bit of effort in, I think you can lose people. And ultimately, it'll attritionally work its way down to a sort of smaller sprint finish amongst peers. As I say, don't worry if you are one of those people dropped, because our experience is that subgroups form behind and you have your own private races with people, of similar ability, which makes it more competitive and more fun for you anyway. That's our view. If you disagree, we accept that. We don't have any problem. All shades of opinion welcome here. As you can see, it's sort of gradually rising without there being any sort of key slope. You can just tell by the horizon at the end of the road that you are going uphill, and you can see the angle compared to the houses. But it's not steep. It's just not going to be decisive enough for anybody to, make a race-winning move at this point. So we hit the top. We're going to turn right and head down another little dip by the roundabout. It's almost the entrance, or the main entrance to Ruislip Woods. As I said before, if I was going on my mountain bike, I would just ride over that roundabout and go through that back gate there. But you go straight into the woods there, and it's you won't find there's many people there. Whereas the main entrance, which goes down to the lake, there's a pub there, a cafe, as I say, a little mini railway. There's even an artificial beach that you can go on. Although I think you're not allowed in the water these days, for mainly for health and safety reasons, I suspect, but also because they've made it a nature reserve. Whereas when the lake was first opened up to the public, it's actually a reservoir, but a very small reservoir, but it was actually set up for sports, to get people swimming, and they did a lot of water skiing and things like that on it. But in the modern times, it's about preserving ducks and things, or some sort of birds that nest or use the water and things like that. As you can tell, nature isn't one of my strong subjects. So here we go. There's a little dip here. We're going to go down to the BP garage at the end, which you may or may not be able to see at the moment. And we turn left there. And again, just because we're going into this dip, we're now going to come out of it on the other side. And, it's like this all the time. Nothing significantly difficult, but it's going to, just be up and down a little bit, undulating as we go around. So as I say, we're going to do a left here. It gets a bit busy here because so many people come to use this petrol station, and I usually ride out here earlier in the morning than this, so I don't usually suffer from it so much. And not the prettiest road, this one. It's got a few sort of industrial plots and a crematorium, and as I say, not the most stunning road. The crematorium just there on the right, and sort of a few builders, merchants and things like that on the left. But you can see it's slightly rising, same old story. So just as I say, just, if you are sitting on the back and struggling a little bit, conserve your energy on the on the bits you can, because this is where you just don't want to get dropped on one of these. If you get 20 yards off in an RGT race, you can find yourself adrift, and if somebody's powering at the front, even with your best efforts, you might not get back on. And once you're solo, of course, riding becomes harder. And again, we're at a stage now in this where I think you wouldn't really want to wait for the next group, because you're actually inviting people to compete with you. And I think I would probably, at this stage of the race, try for a solo finish, in the sense that you can hold the gap, or at least if the gap comes down, the group behind doesn't catch. But it depends how far they're back, and it depends how strong you feel. Now we're going to go. I mean, this is. I'm just trying to think how far we've got to go. As you can see, we're right on the edge of London. There's buildings to the left and not to the right in this area, and that, as I say, is kind of the limit of where the buildings come up to in London. As you can see, there's lots and lots of buildings on the left and absolutely none on the right, which is what this road is like, I'm afraid. Actually, some of that road, some of the fields on the right, actually, are sports fields as opposed to country fields. But anyway, we get to the end of this, and we're going to turn left and go along a similar road, which is kind of, one of these right on the outskirts roads, on the perimeter of London. Again, it's slightly undulating, and after that, we're going to sort of head back. We're going to do a sort of full circle here, and head back through Ickenham to Ruislip, and finish up at a bike shop. Why not? We started at Brompton, and we're going to finish at the Specialised shop, which is actually called the Specialised shop. It's not a dealership of another name. It is actually the Specialised shop. Although it is actually a franchise, it's not owned by Specialised, to my knowledge. I'm pretty sure the owners are the people who actually work in it, and so on and so forth. As I say, this road's slightly undulating, nothing difficult. We're going to go past some of the works on the HS2 project. That's the High Speed Rail Link, HS, standing for High Speed. High Speed 2, it's going to go from London up to Birmingham and eventually Manchester. High Speed 1, in case you're not aware, is the rail link between London and the tunnel that goes underneath the Channel and into France and Belgium. So High Speed 2 is being built along here. Plenty of environmentalists against it. This little section doesn't see too many protests, but the next road along, there is a protester camp full of people venting their views on it. I think they're going to find it's in vain, because the works are carrying on. At best, they'll slow it, which doesn't seem to really achieve much, I suspect, other than gaining attention for their cause, because I think it's going to happen. This road's sort of technically just in London, but we're actually going around the very edge of London. And as I say, you probably wouldn't get planning permission to build any houses here, although if you're government, you can give yourself planning permission to build a big railway through it. And this is where the railway works are. I had assumed when they would build it, they were going to use the existing railway where we're going under the bridge here, which is the line from London Marylebone up to Birmingham. But no, they're actually building a separate one, and a lot of it is under a tunnel. So you won't actually see the railway around here. It'll be under a tunnel. I suppose it helps if it's going through the Prime Minister's constituency, although, to be fair, he wasn't the Prime Minister when the decision was made. Anyway, it's, as I say, peripheral road. We're going to turn back into residential areas fairly shortly off this road as we come up to the sign that says welcome to Ickenham, and we turn into the built up area. As you can see, that road is one of those lines that's drawn where you can't build one side of it, but you can have lots of buildings the other. It's where London, or at least in terms of buildings, stops, even if the actual boundary is a little bit further away. So we're now in Ickenham, which is, you'll only have ever heard of this, I suspect, if you live there, got relatives there, or you've seen the station on the London Underground tube map. It's just one of those dormitory places for commuters. It's sandwiched in between Uxbridge and Ruislip, and It's quite a pleasant place, as you can see. It's well-heeled, well-to-do and respectable. We're going to go over the River Pin here. One of the races in this series is called It's All Gone Down the Pin, where we're actually going to follow this river, but that's the river there. So that's another one to look out for. So I mentioned a couple here, haven't I? There's the Lido Rido and the well, certainly that one. It's All Gone Down the Pin. And there's a few connections between other races that we got on this. Life on Mars was the other one I mentioned, wasn't it? Which is going to start from the Slough Trading Estate, which is not in West London. It's in Berkshire. As I say, there's a couple that I'm planning that I haven't actually tested and ridden yet as well, which I won't mention yet. They can come out later as Series 3 unfolds. Series 3 starting in early April, going all the way around to September. There will be 13 races. This is race 2.10 in Series 2. There are 2 more after this one. We've got the Rusty Bike one to finishing it all up. The Rusty Bike is the name of a cafe, which is a charity as well. So that will be the final race, 2.12. And the next one after this is Ascot Legoland, which starts at the Ascot Racecourse, where they have the famous Royal Ascot meeting with the Queen and everything. So Ascot Legoland, and it goes to Legoland in Windsor, which is a theme park, which features a well-known children's toy building brick brand, as you might have noticed. This is Ickenham. This is where the Ickenham village is, the shops. We're just going to come up here and you'll see the village pump, which is still there. Pretty sure it doesn't pump any water out anymore, but it's the equivalent of a well, where people would have got their water in bygone times. We're going to turn left when we get to Ickenham Pump and just go past West Ruislip Station and then up to the specialised shop in Ruislip. There we are. That's the village pump, the little blue thing there, and some oldie-worldy houses left over. Now this area just past here on our right, just past this pub anyway, you'll start seeing some quite new houses. And years ago, this used to be a huge American airbase. It's not anymore. But I think going back to the 1960s and certainly the Cold War, there was a huge American airbase there, one of 2 in Ruislip as it happens. So this area used to see quite a few sort of big American cars riding around it, which is why this road's probably slightly wider than most British roads, I suspect. But anyway, it shrunk down after the Cold War, and it was certainly there probably 20 years ago, but on a very small scale. There was just a sort of a little bit of it left, and now it's all gone, and they built lots and lots of houses on it. So it's no trace of it left at all. In fact, either of them, because the other old American air base is now all industrial units in South Ruislip. So trace of our American friends in their blue uniforms. And of course, the nice thing was the Americans, when they had these air bases here. So this is another little slope. This is just going over the railway bridge at West Ruislip Station, which is the end of the Central line coming out of London. As we go down the other side, we'll go down, but then we have another one of those little, undulating rises as we go up towards Ruislip High Street. But as I was saying, the Americans made the air bases almost as if you were in America when you were inside them, and you had to use US dollars even though you were in the UK, and so forth. In fact, a guy down the road from me ran the record shop in there. So, it was kind of people who were stationed at it could have almost been inside, and apart from the fact it always rains around here, felt that they were in the USA, I guess. So here we are. You can see it rising again. This is I think the last rise of the race, but you're going to get a very, very small dip at the end, and also the end it turns a left-hand bend. So what you might find by the time you do it to the graphics is that you can't quite see the finishing line from a long distance off. So you're going to have to keep your eye out for distances and your rivals. So you've got this sort of climb up here to the White Bear pub, which is a brasserie, I think one of the famous chefs' brasserie chains. and the hotel on the left is a sort of kind of cheaper steakhouse restaurant. So you get this sort of kind of last little sort of slightly dipping, but then climbing here again. But as I say, it's slightly undulating, but the last couple of 100 meters will be sloping downwards, but you've got a bend on it, and that is going to be possibly, potentially, depends how the graphics come out, but you might not see the finishing line from here, and you're nearly there at the moment, but you can't see the corner we're about to go round. Which, so as soon as you see the shops coming up, we're gonna get to the end of the road and then turn left. Then almost immediately after that is the finishing line by the bicycle shop, as I said. So you can see the shops just the end of the road, just behind the bus, and the junction will come up. So as you can see, if you look at the bend here, there's already a bend on this road before we even do the left-hand turn by these bollards. And the finishing line is, you can see the red shop on the right, that's a specialised shop. Well, that's the finishing line, and I'll just turn around there to prove that we are at the specialised shop. So as I say, that's the finish, but you've got that little turn at the end, so watch out for that. Keep your eye on the distance to go measure. Good luck, everybody. See you on the day. Okay, I guess from a mountain biking perspective, we're not overloaded with trails here. We have some great downhills up near Tring or Wendover, sorry, Aston Hill, Aston Clinton, and there's some down in Bracknell in Berkshire. But the Ruislip Woods, I mean, you do see people going over there on their mountain bikes, but I think if you're a serious mountain biker, it's probably just sort of fairly passé. I'm not a very good mountain biker, so I find it quite challenging when I'm there. So it is what it is. As I say, once again, pointing to the architecture here, you can see it's that sort of mix of slightly older 1930s houses, and all the gaps have been filled in by more modern houses. Land does get snapped up and filled up at quite an alarming rate in London, because there's not enough of it, and demand for housing has been high. It remains to be seen whether that happens after COVID, with more people working at home and things like that. But as I say, we're heading towards Ruislip Woods now. You can probably, maybe you can't actually. You will in a moment sort of kind of see there we are. If we go down this hill now, you can see the horizon there. That is Ruislip Woods. So we're sort of dipping down a little bit, and then it goes up where the woods and the Lido are. We're not going to quite go up all of that today. We're going to nearly go there, but again, this is undulating, and you can see here that we're sort of going downhill a little bit, and we'll sort of turn left. Again, it's I'll say that if you go north and south, you get the hills. I mean, we're sort of going northwards now, but when we're going to turn westwards, this will be slightly flat, with a little bit of a sort of ramp up to a roundabout, and we turn right and go past some playing fields. So it kind of, it's undulating, but you can see the gradients are very, very small, and I just don't think this is going to be that influential on the race. Somebody maybe on the back of a pack just can't quite hold on one slope, and once distanced can't get back on. I mean, as I say, attritionally I think it works, but I don't think any of these little bumps are going to be decisive at all in the race. As we turn right, going down by King's College playing fields. King's College